Everybody, welcome to the afternoon lecture. Our guest speaker in attendance today is someone who is a regular to the Academy. For anybody who's checked things out online or followed the activity over the last couple of years, his resume is an enviable one, I would say. A longtime producer and DJ for Jurassic 5, Ozo Motley, collaborator with DJ Shadow on the Brain Freeze and product placement mixes, in addition to a number of other different other remixes that are probably too many to mention adequately here.
Four others.
So he's brought a close collaborator with him. So won't you please give a warm welcome for Cut Chemist and Hymnal.
Can you hear me, by the way? Is this on?
How are we doing on the audio over here?
I know I can hear you really well, but I think I'm just out of phase with myself, so I don't know.
We're good. Is everybody here? Cut okay?
Yeah, cool. All right, great.
All right, so gentlemen, thank you for being here, first of all.
Thanks.
And I guess the obligatory thing to do is probably to go through some of the biographical information. But since you're both here, there's a reason both of you are here. And why don't you just start out first by explaining a little bit about your relationship and how far back that goes.
Hymnal, or Terry, which is its real name, met in 7th grade at middle school in, what was it, Miss Merson's history class or something? And I think we butted heads on something like, I don't know, we had a custody battle over some Run DMC song. And the friendship blossomed after that. I don't think, you didn't start rapping until 91?
Probably about 88.
Oh, was it 88?
Yeah, still in high school.
Well, then you were a closet rapper, because I didn't hear about it until 91. So that's 84. Oh, let's see, we met in 84. So anyway.
All right, when did you meet? It was
84.
84ish?
Yeah.
Okay. And this was where in the world?
In Los Angeles at a school, at a middle school. Actually, it was middle and high school. I stayed and he left, went to LA High. But yeah, that was 84.
And you have collaborated before this, or
just doing math homework, But
okay.
nothing creative.
I guess talk a little bit about just then. I mean, you just mentioned he fighting over custody of a Run DMC song or cassette or something like that.
Yeah, like probably the social impacts of what the song meant. It's like, no, it's like that. It's not anything about that. It's about this.
Right.
Like,
what I guess describe for everybody here a little bit. The environment at the time in the 80s in Los Angeles, and what was going on at the time.
It was like, anybody seen that show Fame? It was like Fame. Everybody was like spinning on their head in the street. Just to give you an example, I would like go to Carl's Jr., which is like a fast food joint, in my windbreaker, because I was into breakdancing. And some dude would see me walking. He'd know that I'm a breaker because I'm wearing a windbreaker. And he's got a radio, and his friend's with him, and walks over, bum rushes me. He's like, yo, man, breaks out some cardboard, like right in front of the Carl's Jr., and we just battle, And I'm just like, dude, this is some really surreal shit. It's like, yeah, let's just dance, at the drop of a hat. And, it was like that, on Hollywood
West Side
Boulevard.
Story.
People were walking around, and, Mike and I would be battling people on rapping, back then. People were rapping on the street, they were dancing. It was like it was like a Lionel Richie video. It was crazy. And so that's what it was like back then. Run DMC was out, and rap was just kind of crossing over with everything else, all the other elements of hip-hop. And, so all the kids were into it, and everybody was really excited about it. So that's kind of where it all started for both of us.
Do you remember a time before rap?
Before rap?
Yes.
Yeah, I was riding BMX bikes, like red lines and stuff, and that's what I was doing before I got into hip hop.
What was your musical outlook like before rap?
Let's see. Well, my dad was cramming Bob Dylan down my throat, so that was fun, and I was listening to just like a lot of pop radio. You know what I mean? Like you know, all the 80s hits that everybody knows. That's pretty much what I was buying.
I guess, you know, we hear a little bit about, you know, anybody who's like sort of heard anything about like the history of LA and hip hop and whatnot, you know, has some roots in electro and things of that nature. Do you want to, what was your experience with that?
I think most, because LA's so spread out, the cultural dynamic of LA is really interesting. And I can't, it's pretty mysterious still to me, even though I've lived there for 34 years. I think that's what keeps me there, is the fact that I just can't figure the place out. But yeah, there was a huge electro scene, I think, because of the mobile DJ scene, which is different than the East Coast. I think it was more about house parties and block parties out there in LA. People had to drive, so it was mobile DJs because it was so spread out. You know, even in the Bay, they had the same thing, and so. Not that that has anything to do with electro, but for some reason, all the mobile DJs were playing electro, like It's Time and Cybertron and stuff like that. I don't know, I think it came from like maybe the pop lock era, you know, it came off all that whole, the whole like R&B, getting, just becoming more progressive, you know, so. And
when did you decide to start messing with these things over here?
These things?
Yeah.
84. Yeah, I DJ'd, what was my first DJ experience? Oh yeah, you guys are gonna like this one. On my 12th birthday, I entered a DJ battle that KDAY, which is the local radio rap R&B station at the time, was sponsoring. And I thought, oh, this is fun, yeah, I'll just, you know, put on my windbreaker and go DJ, man. And I didn't know how to use a mixer, all I knew to do was move the record back and forth. But I was good at it, and I remember I was like, trying to put a little pizzazz in it, so I was like popping and scratching and shit. It was really corny, it was bad, it was terrible, it was horrible. But yo, man, I made it, that was like the preliminaries, and the final was at Radiotron, which is that club in Breakin'. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie, right? Anyway, so I made it past the preliminaries, I think based on the sole fact that I was white and I was 12, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't really good, and I remember fools were salty. They were like, you know, who's this little new jack, white, you know? Because that was back in a time where there were no white DJs, you know, and there certainly weren't any 12-year-old white DJs. So I did have that going for me, but I got crushed in the finals because I was trying to blend like Buffalo Gals in Its Time, and it just wasn't working. So I got dissed.
Do you remember who won?
I remember Arabian Prince was actually in the battle.
Arabian Prince.
Yeah, from Uncle Jam's Army. Yeah, okay. But I don't think he won. But there were some good DJs at that battle. But anyway, that's how it all started.
Besides Arabian Prince being involved in that battle, do you have any recollections? I mean, you were young at the time, but of like, you know, Uncle Jam's Army or any of that sort of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And explain what that was.
Uncle Jam's Army was a mobile DJ crew that started doing mixes on KDAY, the rep radio station, every Saturday night. So,
just to interrupt, I guess for those, you know, I think everybody sort of, we're at a point where, you know, rap radio 24 hours is not really that big of a deal, but K-Day was a pretty big deal. It was the first 24-hour
yeah, 24 hours. They broke records like, I mean, no other place in the world were they playing airtime anyway. De La Soul, Public Enemy, you know, they played Rebel Without a Cause constantly in daytime rotation. Talking to program directors, just on a side note, I mean, people that DJ there like Tony G, program directors would actually threaten them taking away their job if they played that rock shit, quote unquote, again for PE, or that spacey shit, quote unquote, for De La Soul. You know, but they were just like, man, fuck you, we're gonna keep playing it because the listeners are calling in requesting it. So songs like Plug Tunin' and stuff, and they even played Double Huey Skit, which wasn't even available, you know. So that's K-Day.
But okay, so sorry to sidetrack you a little bit, but anyways, as far as K-Day, as far as the background goes, but Uncle Jam's Army was
one of the DJ group that did mixes for the station every Saturday night. So, you know, if they had an event like Run DMC Live at the Pasadena Convention Center, they would have Uncle Jam's Army opening up, doing, you know, DJ sets. And Egyptian Lover, who was one of the members, had like, you know, 8 turntables, and they would be doing live mega mixes where it was like, it sounded like a studio creation, but they were doing it live. So it was pretty progressive for that time. I mean, this is like 84, 85.
And they're playing huge venues
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Like huge, almost like forum,
Like,
size places.
Like huge auditoriums, huge like
Yeah, not even like
stadiums.
1,000, like 10,000, capacity.
So I guess, from when did you get to the point where, you really took it seriously as far as just, from messing around on the turntables to doing
Production.
production and whatnot?
I think when I heard everything, I was just a fan of hip-hop music. I never really considered myself somebody that wanted to do it until I heard the Jungle Brothers album, Straight Out to Jungle, because it was a record that was made entirely of records. There was no drum programming, and there was nothing used other than records to make that. And I was into collecting records. I was into DJing and stuff. So I was like, I can make something like that, So that's when I met Charlie Tuna and Mark 7 from Jurassic 5. I think we met around '87. And we started making demos in very much the same fashion as that album. We would just keep, I remember we used Watermelon Man by Herbie Hancock, and I was back and forth. And they would rap.
They would just rhyme over it,
They
and you
would
would use
just rap
two
it, yeah.
copies and just do the beat.
And then my dad he used to write songs, so he had a 4-track, and he gave that to me, and we started making demos and stuff with a sampler.
So then, how did you get from just working with those guys and doing Jurassic?
I think it was a long haul of demos, doing demos and getting turned down by labels, and it was a real dark time for underground music. We were just we had to get signed and all this kind of stuff. And then Jurassic 5 was just I think was the first time we put something out independently, because we were just like, screw this, we're not going to do demos anymore. It's not really going anywhere. So we pressed up something ourselves and put it out there, sold it out of the trunk of my hatchback, $5 a piece, and then it got picked up by Blunt, TVT, out of New York, and that was '94.
Okay.
So that was when things really, this is what it's finally happening.
And that was that single...
Unified Revolution.
Unified Revolution. Now, you said it was a dark time for underground in terms of what?
I'm talking like late '80s in LA. If you were doing if you were doing anything that didn't sound like, LA Dream Team or something, I don't know, and you weren't getting put on, We were definitely embracing more of an East Coast thing, because I was heavily influenced by East Coast. So it was just hard to find a niche in LA. People weren't really trying to hear it, even though at the time you had NWA, but that was more gangster stuff, and that was also eclipsing the whole scene. So there was really no place for conscious East Coast influence rap in LA. But
Was it just the sonic pull of what people were doing in the East Coast that made it attractive to you, or because obviously Jurassic had a lot of vocal interplay and
right.
How did all those elements come across to you being out there?
I think plain and simply, I think just me not being from there just seemed it so much more alluring and mysterious that I just wanted to know about it. It was foreign to me, and I knew that the roots to hip hop lied in New York. So it was, if I wanted to know where I was going, I had to learn more about it. So I would collect battle tapes and all that kind of thing.
You did visit New York though regularly, didn't you?
Yeah.
So explain a little bit about your visits to New York in the '80s and what kind of profound effect that had on you.
Yeah, '86. I guess 13. My sister was going away to college in NYU, and so we would go visit her every summer in New York for like a couple weeks, and I would just sit there. First of all, I would map out this huge digging trip. Pretty cool for a 13-year-old, I got to say. I would go to the library, tear out all the yellow pages, check them out from all the cities we were going to be, driving through, and make sure I, went to all the record stores and taped all the radio shows. I would have 2 boxes in the hotel room while my family would go out and do tourist stuff. I'd like, hell no. Right here, Chuck Chill Out on one end, Red Alert on the other, press and record on both, and just sitting there like this, and bring those tapes back home and play them for people like Terry. And we would just bug out off them, and that's how, and for Charlie and everybody, and we'd all sit there and, just get inspired and make music.
Right. Now, I mean, when you guys, finally signed or got, you know, your records picked up by other labels and things. I mean, at the time, you know, you had said it was a dark time, it was a difficult time for underground artists in Los Angeles, but, you know, I think it also became a fertile time because there was other like-minded people. Is that correct? Or,
absolutely. I think once the mid-'90s came around, and Fat Beats started putting out a lot of records. There's like, you know, East Coast started putting out tons of independent records. I mean, a lot more than they already were in the 80s, and it was just an influx, huge. And it got people, I think, everywhere putting out independent records, you know what I mean? You had Fellowship, which was, Freestyle Fellowship is pretty much one of my favorite rap groups of all time. Not only because they were really skilled, but they were the first group I've ever saw put out something completely independent. I think the only store that I saw this record in was like 555 Soul, you know what I mean? And it was such bad quality. It was like a 4-track, unmastered. It had everything going against it, you know. But it was really good, and they were a good group. It was a great piece of art, and they got signed off it. So I kind of said, okay, so it doesn't really matter how, you know, you don't have to go to a big studio. You just, if you just do whatever you want to do and make sure it's the best it can be, you know.
Now, speaking of
worth putting out.
Speaking of the fellowship, and do you want to mention anything about some of the sort of live venues and scenes that were going on at the time that sort of catapulted
in
some
LA?
of those guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how that was inspirational to you? And,
there's a health food store called The Good Life in South Central LA, and that was every Thursday night they had an open mic night, and Freestyle Fellowship was one of the main groups that would show up every week, and other people like Corrupt from Dog Pound and Far Side and Pigeon John. I mean, you know, there's so many people that built careers from that place, and it was just great. You know, it was, you couldn't curse on the mic, so you had to be really creative about what you said, and it was right at that time, like right around the riots, the Rodney King beating. So it was like a really fragile, volatile time, certainly in that area. FOI was rolling deep, you know what I mean? So it was like, it got a little abrasive sometimes for me. I had like really long dreadlocks, so that was even more added fuel to the fire.
Memorable encounters with Nation of Islam security.
Yeah, exactly. But it was cool because, you know, everybody respected what I did because, you know, the beats were tight, and Charlie Tuna and the rest of my crew was cool too. So it was just a great time. He formed a group called Darkleaf, and they would come up there with us, and then we would just roll like this big posse, native tongue style, and do songs, and we just earned a lot of respect there, and it was really cool. It was like bright fluorescent lights, fresh produce, and rappers. You know, it was really weird.
So Terry, what was your recollection of that era, and how profound an effect did it have on you?
Well, it was big because of, like Lucas was saying, the East Coast influence on West Coast rap, West Coast underground rap, was really big for my culture from an Afrocentric point of view, and the academic kind of Afrocentric philosophy that came from the East Coast and that came from the Nation of Islam, came from Zulu Nation, and affected everybody who was listening to K-Day. By the time they were rapping, consciousness was pretty much the main way to advance your skills. It was talking about a self-philosophy, life philosophy, and it blended well with that scene at The Good Life, which was a health food store, which was about positive vibes and being positive in the community, and it was run by a lady named B. Hall, and that was her goal as well. It was kind of an educational thing, you know, getting the neighborhood kids to stay out of trouble. So that was the big piece of it, and so I was just happy to be a part of it. Everybody was there week after week, not only practicing their skills, but also talking about the latest books, the latest philosophy, the latest esoteric religious ideas and things that would influence the next rap that they were going to write. And it was, you know, a far cry from the kind of aesthetic of gangster rap that just had a completely different motivation to it, a completely different set of words.
It was almost reactionary to the gangster rap scene because there was so much of it going on, and it was almost like we were all sick of it. So we all just kind of rendezvoused every Thursday to...
Yeah, because not being from, you know, Los Angeles, you know, from being from the East Coast, we always thought that, you know, that was just what LA and California stuff was.
Yeah.
You know? But you said that Corrupt from the Dog Pound would make appearances at
Yeah.
So what kind of like interaction, if any, besides that?
I mean, but we didn't like, you know, gangster rappers would show up and they would do their gangster shit. And we weren't mad at that. Like, it was cool. If you had skills, it didn't matter what, you know, you talked about or how you flipped it, you just couldn't curse. So, I mean, people did their gangster shit, and it was cool if it was entertaining. But, you know, a big part of what was going on there wasn't gangster. So, you know, it was like, hang your gangster up at the door and come on in, you know.
I guess, is there anything you want to drop any music or anything? I mean...
yeah, man. Why not? Let's.
You might as well break things up a little bit.
Yeah, let's play a little something from the new album, shall we?
Okay.
Or is that jumping the gun?
No. I think it's a good thing to do. What do you want to play for everybody?
Maybe we should start with a rap song, because we're talking about rap music. So maybe, and it's the new single, so I can plug it.
And this is from.
This is from. The Audience is Listening, my solo album that just came out like 2 months ago. It's on Warner Brothers.
And what are we going to hear? And do you want to preface it by saying anything?
Shit. Sorry. We're about to hear The Storm.
Okay.
Edon and Mr. Liff are rapping on it. Okay. So. The cool thing about that one is that I think it encompasses everything we talked about. There was a big influence on 84, 83 sounding music, obviously, and then, you know, like the East Coast MCs. So yeah, I thought that was appropriate to follow up with.
What this is your first solo record after, you know, pretty lengthy, I guess, career doing.
Yeah,
with the
I was in
groups?
J5 for 11 years.
Yeah.
Motley.
What were your I guess, you know, were there any sort of conscious decisions creatively that you made in approaching this record, you know, being from the so-called, like, turntablism, you know,
yeah,
with that background?
It's funny because I got signed like 4 years ago to Warner Brothers, and it was a lot different then because DJ music, the climate for DJ music, it was cool. It was still cool. And now it's not cool. Like, it just seems like, oh, these types of records aren't really in anymore, you know? So it's really poor timing to put out a record like this, but whatever, it is what it is. I think the approach I took with a record like this, every song had to be something completely different than anything I've done in the past. And I actually, on a side note, I just want to thank Red Bull because I've been tearing my hair out for the last 4 years at Red Bull, trying to make this record. You know, we were in Rome, and I was just like, you know, all depressed, trying to teach students. It's terrible. And in Brazil, I recorded a song during the Red Bull session in Brazil, and it's on here too. So, but yeah, everything just had to be different, you know. Otherwise, you know, if I can't explore, it's not really worth doing. So. What do
you attribute this sort of change in climate to, you know, as far as perception of what?
The mashup, I don't know. You know, I think it's such a convenient culture now. God, who said that? Trent Reznor? It's like, music's like McDonald's or something. They just want it fast and quick. I kind of agree, you know. I think anything that sounds like really overproduced, I think is kind of a turnoff sometimes. You know, people want sometimes, and I kind of feel the same way too. I think things are really minimal right now, and media and marketing. You know, an album has to be like a series of ringtones, not songs. You know, so I mean, and this is the perspective of the industry, the music industry, you know, and I'm talking about people. So, I mean, you know, I think that makes it hard to put out a record like this, which is, you know, highly conceptual, not highly conceptual, but probably just conceptual enough to not get into it. You know, it's like, well, you know, Warner Brothers, the motivational speaker, you know, it's like, you know, what are we going to do with this? You know, there's no chorus, there's no hook. So, you know, you know, a record like this has a lot of things going against it.
Well, but, I mean, did you, I mean, some of the press I've read, you know, in bigging up your record has sort of pointed to the fact that there are songs rather than just sort of exercises. I mean, that must have been something that, you know, was a conscious decision going into it, so that you don't, because you're aware of whatever kind of climate change is out there in terms of, you know.
Yeah, I did try to gear it more towards a pop arrangement. You know, there is verse, chorus, verse structures in there. I mean, suggested, but even in the instrumental songs, you know, I mean, there's I took a music arrangement class in college, and you know, it was like A, B, C, A, you know, verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, out. So a lot of the songs have that arrangement. So.
Do you want to play something else with?
Sure.
Speaking of that speaks to
that
sensibility.
Let's see.
Do you want to play the Garden?
Well, Storm definitely defies all of that.
Right.
It's just verse, out. But let's. I'll play my first big break, which I think would be the best. Watch for the tempo change, though. It's kind of dangerous.
If I get killed, fuck it.
Here is your robot music.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That's actually verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, out.
So what's the
Deviated a little.
what is the big break? What is your first big break?
Well, there's so many connotations of that. I don't know what you mean. Which one do you want?
Well, I don't know.
What's the first big break I found on a record?
Well, what is?
Digging?
I guess in relation to this song, why'd you title it that?
That's my first solo record. It's my first big break. It's the first big break on a record. It's the first big break on the album. It's a surf. It's a a surfer's first big break. It's really like the first time a DJ gets hooked on digging. You know, you might not be into it, but when you find that first drum break, you're like, holy shit, I got to find another one and another one and another one. And it's I think that's why I put the surf guitar sounding thing in there, because it's the same thing for a surfer. When they catch their first break, they're hooked. And there's a lot of parallels to surfing and digging. You try to go to the most furthest out beach that no one goes to find the breaks that no one can. Same thing for diggers in record stores. Go to the unknown record stores to find those breaks. So I don't know. The picture on it's a surfer for the song on the album. So I don't know.
So okay, I guess maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges in putting out a record like this. You know, speaking of breaks, speaking of samples.
On a major label.
On a major label, because this is the thing that obviously drove you to get into the music.
And now it's taboo.
And now it's one of the things that's probably making it a little more difficult.
Yeah. Especially, I think, what was it, like a year ago, they said there's a new law or something. There's no law about sampling. It's just, you can't do it. I guess that's the law. There's nothing that says, if you take this much, you owe this much. There's no graph, as far as the relative proportions of what you take. Which is a crime in itself, because there should be. If you take a snare drum and somebody catches you, they can take 100% of your publishing if they wanted to. It's kind of absurd. Anyway, but that didn't stop me, because that's what I do. I mean, I'm a sample-based artist, and for Warner Brothers, they were really. It took me over a year to clear the samples on the record. I had to take some off because there were some quotes that were outrageous. I sampled "Listen." One word off of Rick Rubin's first record, It's Yours, and he wanted 50% of my publishing and like $15,000, you know what I mean? It's like, can you copyright one word? No, but since it's tied to the master, you can claim the publishing. So I took that off. And, you know, but I did pretty well. You know, I negotiated a lot of things myself with people and approached them like a fan instead of my lawyer contacting their lawyer and having it be this cold business transaction, you know, because a lot of the artists that I sampled are really obscure and, you know, don't have a career anymore anyway.
Right.
So I think they were flattered, you know, when I would call them up and say, hey, I'm a big fan and I used a portion of your song to make my song, send it to them. And if it was nothing like, you know, overtly offensive in it that, you know, would turn them off, if they weren't like a born-again Christian or something and had the word fuck in it or something, then we were good. Yeah, that's how I did it most of the time.
Was it demoralizing, or, you know, when you hit a snag and you had to change something, like, you know, obviously you made a decision to put that, you know, listen, you know,
and that listen was a big one for me.
Specific place in the song. So how did you sort of recover from that?
Yeah, it's tough because you spend all this time making the song, you know, and then you find out, oh, I got to change it all of a sudden, you know, in the last minute because I can't clear a sample. But you know, you just find another listen and just bite the bullet, you know.
Now you said, you know, you approached a couple of people you sampled as a fan. I think that you mentioned that you had a situation like that with a particular record.
Yeah.
For a particular song off of this album.
Yeah.
Correct? And why don't you explain a little bit about what happened in that scenario?
This is a real interesting one. I refused to clear a sample, because we had trouble finding them, and we needed to get the record out, and so, or I needed to get the record out. So I just said, okay, cool. There's no sample in this song. All instruments played by me. Yeah. So, as luck would have it, that's the one song that Apple chose to be on their new iPod Nano commercial. So I was like, swell, $30 million campaign, you know, I got to clear this sample. So, because if these guys see it, you know, they're gonna sue Apple, and Apple's gonna sue Warner Brothers is gonna sue me, and no commercial, and, you know, whatever. So we found them, and it was The Boogie Boys by on Mike and Dave Records, which was pretty much an out-of-the-trunk operation.
Yeah, there's a great old school record.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Holy Grail old school
pretty
record.
Small distribution, small run-off.
So we finally, my manager contacted like Mike G from the Jungle Brothers to contact Red Alert, to contact this guy Yoda or something, to contact Disco Dave from the Crash Crew. And he had to talk to his brother, but his brother's like agoraphobic or something, so he had to slide all the paperwork under the door. And, you know, like $200. It was really, really weird. Anyway, Apple has no clue. They're moving forward with this commercial. And you know, I got to clear the sample, and we got like time's ticking. They're going to launch this thing probably in a week. I'm on my tour in England getting phone calls from people like, you know, we're totally screwed. I'm like, just roll with it. We got to do this. You know, I'm about to pass this up. They wanted like $150,000 because they were mad that the record was out, and we didn't clear it with them. So they were like, I want $150,000, and we're mad because Jay-Z used girls, 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 and we got nothing for it. So you're gonna pay, you know. It's like, great. So my lawyer was like, they're demanding you to write this letter. So I wrote this letter. I was like in a sound check at like Belfast or something, and I'm just writing this. Dear Mr. Disco Dave, you know, I'm a huge fan of your record, and I sampled it because, you know, yada, 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 and it has a lot of sentimental value to me. And this was all very true. But that didn't stop him from wanting, like, you know, $150,000. I don't even think he read the letter, but maybe he did. Anyway, it worked out. I think the day that we talked him way down. I owe my lawyer like so much, man, because she kicks ass. But it was at the end of the day, it worked out. For all the money that I made on the commercial, I had to give it to them. But that's okay, because at least I have a commercial out there, you know what I mean? But I think the day they signed the contract was the day it aired. It was crazy. I mean, you could not cut it any closer. So those are the kind of things, like, you know, when you don't clear samples, it's like you got to be careful because if that song gets licensed to a movie or something and people see it, they're going to come back and bite you in the ass. So, I know why Warner Brothers is so, diligent and like looking over my shoulder at the status reports on samples because, there's a bigger picture than just the record. Because that's what music is. Like I was talking about, it's all marketing now. It's not really just music anymore. To them, it's ringtones and movies and commercials and stuff. So I have to remember that when I'm making a record.
So do you think that their awareness of all that stuff is much higher than it was like a few years ago? When you were doing the Jurassic albums and things like that.
Yeah, and plus with the Jurassic album, there were vocalists and stuff, so it was kind of easier to slide, uncleared stuff underneath the table because we had MCs rapping over it. So, but here it's instrumental, so it's like, okay, who's the vocal? We don't credit anybody, and we need to pay them union session money. It's like everything is like so mathematical. No, we got to pay them after. So you almost have to I'm saying too much information because I know you guys are recording this, giving up all my tricks. No, but there's ways around it. There's always, if you need to put something out, you find a way.
Is the trade-off is worth it though for you to be able to reach a broader audience than because you could put all your records on a label where they don't clear anything, but
I thought it was kind of a bold statement to come out on a major label like Warner Brothers, who's never put out a record quite like this, I don't think. Back in the day they had Cold Chillin' and Warner and Jungle Brothers, which is great, but since then I haven't seen any DJ records or anything like that. So that in itself is kind of a bold statement, and I think people are reacting to it. And the sample thing is a big issue. But, all samples cleared. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So.
What, you talk about digging and whatnot. You got a bunch of records here. Is there anything that you want to...
Well, I was actually going to play the Apple song.
Okay.
And,
go ahead.
Yeah.
So,
the Apple song. Oh, shit.
So this is...
This is called The Audience is Listening theme song.
Okay.
Thanks. So the sample in question was the listen to the music, listen. So, we couldn't really, it was like the main part of the song, so I kind of had to show my cards.
It wasn't like something you could just change.
No.
Or I could have said it, but...
Yeah, right. And trust me, that came up. My manager was like, why can't you just redo it with the vocalist? I'm like, you really don't have a clue, do you? It's like, that's just going to change the entire song, and they won't want it anymore, He's like, all right, well, so...
Do you want to talk a little bit about you guys' collaboration on this record?
Yeah, for sure. We did one song, and we'll get into that. But Terry was instrumental in me making this record because, I just needed a shoulder to cry on, pretty much, and somebody to talk philosophy to. Because there's subtle suggestions and concepts in every song, kind of threaded throughout, and Terry and I were deep in concentration and thought, for the whole making of this record. So it was really important that besides that one song, that he stuck around and helped me out with that. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Yeah, what kind of support did you provide for this gentleman over here through his?
Well, like I've kind of mentioned. My whole history is really kind of big into, the conscious movement of rap and the ramifications of it. So, I stayed in school, stayed taking philosophy classes, religion classes, and got a couple psych degrees and stuff like that. So it's like, I was just really good and really aware of some of the ideas that he was trying to portray in the album. And we would talk about it and, use little tricks, little free association tricks to just fill in words, create concepts, just really try to look into every song to try to get it to match the overall concept that we were trying to convey. And there's a lot of different meanings in the album, and one of the major ones from the very beginning was the idea that the audience is listening, the idea of who is the audience and how they're exactly paying attention. Like, what do they want the DJ to do or to be? How's the relationship? Is it reciprocal? Is it just one way where the DJ is making you do stuff? So as you'll hear in some of the songs, like the audience is listening theme song, that refrain of listen, listen to the music, listen, it kind of sounds very hypnotic, because as you go through the album, you'll kind of pick it up, that whole question of what's the role of the DJ and the listener, who's who do you want to be, and who am I as kind of the artist of origin, and maybe we'll figure this all out by the end. And believe me, a lot of the concepts and things we collaborated on while we were doing it were just kind of philosophically complex that, I don't know, it sounded like a very progressive Polish jazz record or something. It was just really, really
it was like
out there.
Word problems and math.
Yeah, like word problems. And so we pulled a lot of that back, and the surprising thing out of that kind of dark theme of who's in control when someone's DJing, luckily the end result turned out to be a whole lot of fun. I mean, if you feel that in all these songs, there's a lot of really joviality, because what I came to discover with Cut is the statement that I found that he was trying to make, or his answer to who's listening and what's the role of the DJ, and kind of to provide excitement and fun and kind of a shared mutual experience that's positive, was the ultimate thing that came out of it. And, you know, that was really fortunate, as opposed to, like, you know, how a Nine Inch Nails record comes out or something.
We did want to make it fun in the end. I mean, you know, it was really hard to make, but in the end, you know, songs like Big Break, they're just fun. You know, it's like you can dance to them, and they're hooky. I think that's important in music. I never was the type of guy to make a record that was so complex that you couldn't get into, and it was a turnoff. Like you said, like Polish. What did you say?
Polish progressive.
Polish progressive jazz. Because Polish, jazz is fun.
But now, I mean, when you started the process, you said it took you 4 years, more or less, right, to finish this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you, at the start of that 4 years, were all these issues like flying around your head even then, or was it something over the process? Because
even when I did songs like Lesson 6, that was in my head. You know what I mean? I wanted to make something very catering to the idea of music theory, tempo changes, complex arrangements from a DJ standpoint. Use, classical and jazz theory in DJ music, but it couldn't strangle itself and be fatiguing to listen to at the same time. It had to be fun. And I think, Lesson 6 was my first experiment with that, and it worked. And so this album is just an extension to that.
well, also not even from like a theoretical point of view, but like just you're talking about philosophy and like sort of asking what the DJ's purpose is and this and that. I mean, what about that was sort of like
I think
driving this
that
project, or is it something that just came out of it from you guys' discussions?
The first song, one of the first songs I did on the record was a song called Motivational Speaker, and it's the first song on the record, and I did that maybe during the Quality Control album, so that was fairly early on, and that concept is pretty much all in there. So I think I did have that early on. In fact, it's a really short song, and I'll play it.
Remembering what you hear.
It's like fun conspiracy, It's telling, it's only good when people listen. Music should be done this way for these types of people, whatever. I just thought that was really funny. I mean, it was a dialogue record that I changed contextually to, fit that theme. And so that's the first song on the record. So it kind of kicks off the whole concept, of what is the role, and if it's, it should be done this way. It's like music fascism.
But I guess obviously you use a lot of different genres of music in what you do. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that
anything here
you want to try to like?
Yeah, just to kind of break the monotony a little bit. Some Polish progressive jazz, perhaps. I'm heavily influenced by African music, particularly Ethiopian. And, you know, I can play probably one of the more famous Ethiopian songs because it was featured on a Jim Jarmusch movie, Broken Flowers. But now we're just totally changing trajectory here, guys. It's like, now we get to listen. It's like music appreciation. But this is a really good track, and I think everybody needs to hear it. So this is Mulatu, a song called Yagela Tazeta. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation because it's Ethiopian. But there we go. You know, one thing that, yeah, definitely applaud that. That's some awesome shit. You guys need to find that guy and bring him to Red Bull. He's around, Mulatu. And when you do, call me. I'm a huge fan of this music, particularly because of the 5-scale method they use, which and diminishing chord changes and stuff like that. It's dark, but at the same time, it's really soulful. And I think culturally and musically, Ethiopia is one of the most isolated parts of the world. They didn't really export their type of music, and I think the closest thing to Western culture, besides Mulatu going to New York and studying music, was probably Duke Ellington going there and playing. But other than that, it was completely isolated.
How did you first start getting into that stuff? Because you know, you did a party in New York this past summer, and you played a lot of this type of stuff.
Yeah, I got into this, I think, well, the first time I heard Mulatu, obviously, was probably when we all did, when Sean Ritchie put out the Vinyl Dogs comp with that one song with the drum break on it. And the shit just sounded like it was recorded on Mars, you know. I've never heard anything like it. And it affects a lot of people the same way. And then meeting people like Quanic. I don't know if anybody knows who Quanic is. He's a really great DJ and music producer and musician. Him and this guy named Miles Claret run a label called Soundwaves, which reissues African records, Caribbean records. And they took a trip to Ethiopia with Brian Cross, a friend of mine. And they turned up just a load of Ethiopian music. They kept going back there, turning it up, and I just was buying it off them, you know, and trading it off them, and they were just schooling me on stuff. So a lot of it comes from them, as far as my knowledge of it. And then I just started going and meeting people around the world that did the same thing. I actually met this is a trip, I met a guy who's a flight attendant with Lufthansa, and he goes and flies around the world, particularly Africa, goes in and buys records. It's a hustle, you know what I mean? And then, you know, when he comes in here on a stopover, I'm like, all right, what'd you bring? And he just dishes it up, and it's beautiful, man. So that's
a good connect.
That is, yeah, connecting flight, man.
Isn't there a lot of Ethiopia stuff on like Ethiopian Airlines or something? That was like the label.
Yeah, Ethiopian Airlines sponsored a lot of the recordings. Well, the U.S. stuff. But the Ethiopian pressings are all like, I think there's only 5 labels that were ever made in Ethiopia. Amha, Philips, you know, Kaifa. I can nerd out all day, but you know, there's 5 labels.
What else? You know, you mentioned like.
And by the way, when we play the song we did together, you'll see how that scale structure fits into.
What do you want to play? Do you want to play that now, or do you want to play something else?
I'm going to play something else.
You have something queued up?
Yeah, this is Indian. This is awesome. And the song's called The Mod Trade, and you know, I'm just kind of into that like kind of moddy 60s kitschy kind of Americana sounding stuff, and mixed with a little ethnicity is always nice. But I think that's kind of that tip. So that one comes from India, and that's kind of more on the psychedelic vibe, which, you know, me and him, you know, I'm bringing like all this ethnic stuff, and he's coming with psych folk and psychedelic records, and we just sit there, you know, for hours playing each other like, okay, here's Maluk and Malesi from Addis, you know, and he's like, oh, okay, here's Kali Ryan from Santa Barbara, you know, and it's kind of a trip and makes a real interesting dynamic. And I think we somehow meet in the middle on this one, you know, it's kind of bridges the gap between the 2 genres.
Was that more or less the process? And how, you know, when you guys went in, it was just, oh, I got these things that are sort of like in my head, and check this out. And that's sort of how the track started up, or?
Pretty much. I think we just do it to kind of diffuse our mind state from the day. You know, let's just break the ice with playing each other some records. And then we won't sample any of those records, but they'll just kind of be swimming in our subconscious when we talk about the song that we're going to do. So, and sometimes, in certain cases, we would sample them, you know. but not all the time. So, but yeah, psychedelic stuff, right?
Yeah, man. So this tune is called "What's the Altitude," and like Luke said, it's pretty much the convergence of all of his kind of esoteric world beats that he's coming with, and from a vocal standpoint, I wanted to tell a story. I mean, it's basically a boy-girl story, but the elements that it has in it have the elements maybe of garage rock. You'll hear a little bit of kind of maybe that White Stripes-ish sound in terms of the beat, and in terms of the vocal, you'll hear the native tongue influence, some of the abstract lyricism, and the refrain, which will repeat, you know, the phrase "it's all right," came to me from listening to the Velvet Underground a lot, because if you know the Velvet Underground, you know Lou Reed says everything's going to be all right in just about every song that he sings, because he's coming down from something, at least at that time. You know, rock and roll, and it was all right. So take a listen, and you'll hear all those influences, and hope you like it.
This is if Mulatu Astatke joined a punk band. I guess that's what we'll call it. So.
Word. That song, surprisingly, well, not so surprisingly, that song was also featured on a More Cowbell website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
In case you didn't know.
Awesome.
But so listening to that song, you should hear a lot of influences, phrases like "better living through chemistry," which I use was a tagline from the Eli Lilly chemical company that the hippies took and flipped to use as a catchphrase, basically to encourage people to use LSD. So if, you know, I drop subtle things in there that are real cues to that time. I mean, that was a really inspirational time for me, and I like digging for music during that period. In a lot of ways, that music, psychedelic music, it comes from the same place that conscious rap comes from. It's like the desire to perfect yourself, to transcend adversity, to dig into the darkest parts of yourself and go down into the darkest parts and bring something up from that. It's like the symbol of the lotus being, you know, the roots of the lotus being down in the dark mud, but yet the flower is up and open to the air. So that kind of music, it brings that also, tends to bring that out also in the people that listen to it. And the way that seems to flash forward today is kind of contemporary neo-tribalism or neo-paganism. I mean, a lot of you out here probably make music, make electronic music, make hip-hop music. You know, the scene of the people that you're entertaining, they're often there with their psyches enhanced in some type of way, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or acid or X or things like that, or nothing at all. Most of the time when they're meeting together to hear the music that we're playing, it's basically to transcend whatever adversity that they were going through at that time and find a new place, come together in a union at a new place. And it's, you know, you could see the remnants of psychedelic culture in, well, the offshoots into rave culture. If you look at the philosophies of, like, say, Timothy Leary, for example, he espoused a kind of conservative, religious, if you can use the word conservative and Timothy Leary in the same sentence, he had more of a conservative view of dropping out this religious kind of demeanor around psychedelics, whereas someone like Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters had like a freak out kind of philosophy, which is drop your acid, play your music really loud all at once, do it all right now, play the visuals, show the gel slides and just go to town, and see what actually happens. And if you, want to read more about that stuff, there's Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test that'll tell you all about that time. And Timothy Leary has many books, Psychedelic Experience, Psychedelic Prayers, along with records. The Merry Prankster also have records with the Grateful Dead, Trippin', and all that stuff. So all this stuff has been very, very well documented. But if you look at the modern dance culture, modern electronic culture, you'll see both of those vibes in that culture now. The sacred spirit, spiritual symbols, and just the idea of just freak out, balls to the wall kind of experience. And where that seems to all fit in, as far as creating music, is the idea that for ourselves, we try to take these pieces, whether they're samples, whether they're synth patches or sounds, we try to take them from one source, combine them together, and ultimately try to create something that's a third thing that's new, unique, and different from the parts that we put together, that we use to put the song together. So that's how, in my opinion, how that music is definitely influenced me. And if you want to know more about creation from that standpoint, there's books by Carl Jung on creativity and the active imagination. That I would definitely recommend checking out. His idea of the transcendent function is top-notch because it involves pulling things from your unconscious to your conscious and then seeking to create that, that third new thing that's different and distinct. Because if we all just pulled from our sound modules and our samples and just left things as they are, today all music would sound alike. But somehow we all take these things, you can give any one of us the same set of samples and we'd all come up with something new. And that's kind of a symbol of how that function works. So
How did you first get into the psychedelic stuff?
Well, I was about 13 years old, and a lot of my knowledge about that came just from collecting weird records. I mean, really when I first started off, going by covers of records was something that was really big for me. And always with psychedelic records, they would have the real trippy kaleidoscopic drawings and things like that. And I picked that stuff up. And what I just started to notice was the similarity in the lyrics to the philosophy of conscious rap, the idea of transcending growth, going to a higher place, a more unified place, and things like that. But I've been collecting that stuff for a while, and I mean, for those of you out there that sample, a lot of the open drum breaks come from rock records, so those are big for collecting. But over time, I've just got into them and got into the underlying philosophy of it, the people and the movements and stuff like that. And it would have a big influence on the stuff that I started to write. Not only doing that kind of stuff, participating in electronic music culture, hippie culture in the States and stuff like that, but just always, it just influenced me. It brought me here.
Were your parents hippies?
My brother's a big old hippie, man.
My parents had a cornfield and a weed marijuana patch. Does that count? I'm pretty sure they were hippies. Are we recording this? Sorry, Mom. Yeah, big time. My dad wrote folk songs, and yeah, they used to cook weed, and I was like, what is that? What's in the oven? What's for dinner? It was a real trippy, in Hollywood in the 70s. I mean, it was just kind of, I remember my dad has stories because he grew up in Hollywood his whole life, and he used to give rides to the Manson followers without, he was like, wait a minute, who was that on the I just gave her a ride. So he's lived there his whole life, and hearing him talk about his experiences through all that. They used to sell soap with Amway to the Roxy, so I used to be like this little 4-year-old in diapers, like in the back seat while they were at the Roxy, like doing something. I don't know, hanging out with some people. Yeah, so they were.
Yeah. For those of you who are interested, the beat writers, William Burroughs, for example, has some of the first sampled loop experiments that were out there. He pioneered, along with Brian Geisen in North Africa, Turkey, out there with the Sufi mystics when Burroughs was living exiled out of the States and had a bad heroin habit. He was doing a lot of tape recorder experiments where he would tape on multiple tape recorders his poems. Then he would take those tapes, cut them up, and restructure them, basically to take the same phrase and do all of the permutations of the phrase. And you could find some of these early experiments online. You'll hear some of these early William Burroughs sound collages and some of his experiments with Brian Geisen. They're really, really interesting. And he was also into the idea, I guess loosely you could say, of the transcendent function. With his cut-up method, he'd take long Bible verses and things like that and cut them up and change them, kind of like refrigerator magnet poetry, and do all the permutations of the words. And he and Brian Geisen, I guess, along with the Sufi mystics and a lot of hash, believed that there was magic that would come out of the recombining of words. So, take that for what it's worth. Maybe it's kind of naive, but I think a little bit of that is what we all expect to find when we put together the things that we put together.
And every country has its own form of that. Brazil has Tropicalia, which follows the same philosophies, and I'm sure people like Pierre Henry and people in France, were Jean-Jacques Perry and Kingsley and people like that were doing something similar, all relatively around the same time as well. So I think it's that should be stated too.
Right, and there was a lot of artists that came out to North Africa at that time. They were just everybody was into this stuff, like the new consciousness, the new way, things that would later become New Age philosophy and the electronic music culture and things like that. And Luke actually has a sample here, one of the records that came out of those.
Oh yeah. It's
out of those sessions. I didn't know there were anything recorded, but he actually found a Nathan Davis record from his time in Turkey.
Yeah, when he went out with Burroughs and all those guys.
Yeah, when he was out there with.
But there's nothing that really has any evidence of electronic kind of cut and pasting. It's all just straight jazz.
Right, it's just free and consciousness.
But they were all there at the same time when they did this. At that point.
You mentioned how you saw the parallels between, that stuff and the conscious rap. Do you saying conscious rap from the classic era, or and if, I was just curious to know where you hear conscious rap now.
Now, a lot of just the general underground aesthetic in general with rap and DJ culture is on that tip. It's like, let's all get to a better place, let's have fun doing it, let's maybe, break our heads open a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're all going to a better place. And I think in a lot of ways, that is kind of one of the top 5 signature things of what makes underground music, is that kind of desire for transcendence, which, pop music tends to define what that is for you. And there are certain people who like to have that defined for them, and others who have a more expansive view. And, we have our share of fellows like, the Roots and Common, and, in some senses, Kanye is a representative of that type of aesthetic that people can take in a kind of general mainstream way. But dance music culture in general, with the repetitive beats, the kind of tribalist style, the drums. I mean, it's all kind of evocative of pulling something out of you, you know, from kind of a ecstatic kind of trance point of view.
Is there anything else you want to throw on, or does anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah,
Do they
I'm pretty much out of stuff. But if anybody has any questions or...
Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask at this point? Just hold on a moment and we'll get you a microphone.
It's a very good illustration because I just give Cut Chemist one of my mixtapes, and the very last track of it, it's actually a cut-up of William Burroughs' Timothy Leary. It lasts just 50 seconds, but it's a good illustration.
Do you want me to play it?
Yeah, play it. I'm sure everybody's going to understand all your words, so
I like,
just on the point.
I like your packaging, by the way.
Thanks. And so basically, it was a big. They were just discussing for like about an hour or whatever, and I just took words and make them say something else. But it's right on the
Track 27. Okay.
Why we should have these illusions.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thanks for that. Oh, I'm going to have fun listening to that one later. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, anybody
or
else?
If you want me to play anything, you have... Anybody here? We got a mic coming here.
Sometimes you use a sample and you cannot find the source or find the people, so you can go for it, and if someone appears, you will just take the benefits of it. This is how it works.
Yeah, it's weird. If you sample from the record, you know, there's two issues. There's a publishing issue and a master issue. If you remake somebody else's music, you know what I mean, then that's a publishing issue, which means, oh, you ripped off the chords of my song, or, you know, it sounds a lot like my song. Which usually, sometimes you can fight because there's so many notes it takes to make a composition copyrightable. But when you take something off a master and you can actually place it, oh, I know that's off my record that I put out, you really don't have a case at all. They can get you for any amount of money or for whatever they want, you know.
Because in the Arab world, what we often have is old singers and very old records, and sometimes we sample, but there is no way we can find the people there.
Yeah.
Because the system there is that you buy a song from a composer,
Right.
and then he gives up all the right.
Where is this? I'm sorry?
In the Middle East.
Oh, in the Middle East.
Yeah, and in Ethiopia and in Africa a lot.
Right.
So what I was wondering, because sometimes we sample old songs and we want to sample them because we are kind of reviving this traditional music, but without knowing where to search and hoping that they appear. What happens when they appear? They can stop the record, or they just ask for the benefits?
I mean, you know, when you fight it in court, you know, sometimes the court's lenient and says, you know what, I think your claim's too outrageous, and I think, you know, you should only ask for this much. That happens a lot. So if somebody wants $1 million, it's like, okay, well, how much money did my record actually make? And then they have to make a reasonable deduction of how much they deserve from the amount of money that your record made. That's usually what will happen, but, you know, then again, I can't make you any promises.
So you recommend that we go for it anyway?
Oh, hell yeah.
Are we recording this?
No, do that. I mean, you can't stop art, you know what I mean? I think it's as much as the industry tries to put rules, and that's why they put rules, because they know, you know, we're an untamed beast, you know what I mean? You can't stop us from making art. So that's my whole philosophy. I'm going to keep sampling forever, and, you know, fuck anybody that says I can't do it, because I know, you know, I can and I will. And I think everybody should do the same, you know? So yeah, go for it, man.
Anybody else? Who's next? Over here.
All right, there. First off, I just want to say, you know that first track, the one with Liff on?
Yeah.
It really reminds me of Stroke of Death from Supreme Clientele, Ghostface.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just got that that energy to it, you know, and that's a big up there because that LP is like.
Yeah, that Ghostface shit is
Yeah,
dope.
it's like I used to rotate it like
Oh,
3,
cool.
4 times around, you know.
Yeah, not to cut you off, but that's like where old school rap meets psychedelia, where it's like everything's just in your face and really not trying to be afraid of anything, which I think Ghostface and that whole crew was all about that philosophy.
Yeah.
Madlib's about that, you know, and I really respect the hip hop people that are willing to take it there, because there are not many of them. So, thanks.
Yeah, that's definitely a big up. Just on a lighter note, I wanted to ask you if you've ever played in a women's toilet. If you've and what did you think of it, if you did?
Have I played records?
Well, played whatever, you know.
Thank you for the clarification.
Hold up a second. I'm gonna give you this mic because your other one's cutting out.
Yeah, I have played in a woman's toilet, actually, 12 hours ago, or whatever it was, at Honky Tonks. Apparently the hip-hop room was the woman's bathroom. That's great. That's encouraging. You know, the house room, you know, that was in the main room. And we got the woman's bathroom. So, yeah, to answer your question, I have played in a woman's bathroom. Thank you. What has this career become?
I just want to make a comment about what you were saying. I don't know your name. That I personally do everything bootleg since 4 years, but I have a job aside, so I'm not. No, but I don't care. And what is good is by doing that over the years, I got a respect from some people that give me the rights at the end. So.
I think different countries treat it differently. You know, America is just like everything else that happens there. It's just negative. You know what I mean? And there's people just try to take advantage over there. But yeah, there's a lot more respect. Like in Italy, for instance, I know people that, you know, people that have been sampled. They're like, oh no, it's cool. You know, I like it. Sometimes they're like, I wish they would have credited my name on the record. You know, but. France, I'm sure is the same thing. And in Poland, I cleared a sample in Poland, a Polish record. And that was a little weird because I guess the state owns everything. So, I mean, the artist really has no claim to their own music. So I had to go through the state and all this crazy shit. But yeah, every territory is different. They treat it differently. So, you know, all the more reason to go for it.
You should go for it.
Hello?
There it is. Yeah,
Okay. There is a sunshine story about that. I have a friend in London who made a bootleg of a Whitney Houston song.
Yeah.
And it got really popular. So I think our record company did a smart thing. They flew him over to make a remix.
Yeah.
Finally. So there are those kinds of
That's awesome.
too. Yeah.
If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's big up on Whitney Houston's record company, man. That's cool. Did it come out?
Yeah.
It did. Out. And was it like a big remix and happy ending?
Happy ending.
Great. Excellent. Dreams do come true sometimes. Anybody else? Is this the first lecture of the whole series?
Again, just do you know the Mulatu remix, by the way, of 0dB?
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody was talking to me about a re-edit of the one I played by Bugs in the Attic. Or somebody.
No,
not Bugs in the Attic. Not Bugs in the Attic. Somebody. Is that girl Karen here?
It's actually 0dB who did it.
Okay.
Of course, it's a bootleg.
It's
a
bootleg.
12 minutes long edit of Mulatu Astatke, the Ethiopian thing we've listened.
Okay.
And it's a mate of mine. I make music with him, with 0dB, and he made a fantastic edit, and it's no cracking.
Oh shit. Okay. I gotta hear that.
Should get it.
Yeah. We'll rap about that afterwards. Cool.
Yeah, just about the Ethiopian music. All these records have been reissued by some French guy who devoted his life to Ethiopian music, and you can find this on
the Ethiopiques.
Ethiopic.
Francois. Isn't it Is his name Francois?
I don't remember his name.
Yeah. The Ethiopique series, which is a wealth of information. He
Not everything's reissued on there, though. He missed a few good ones, but I'm sure he'll get around to them. What volume are they up to by now, like 38?
34.
34?
Yeah.
34 volumes of Ethiopian music. It's a series called Ethiopiques out of France. And I would highly suggest, if you're into this type of music, to go and pick all of them up. And they range everything from like Ethiopian soul to traditional. But it's a good place to start.
Also, they are remastered.
And they are remastered. Yeah, sometimes off the tapes and not off the record, so they sound better. And even some unreleased stuff as well, I think. So, yes. Over there in the back, we got two people.
This is getting back to the sample side of things. A lot of musicians that I've worked with over the years have taken samples and either pitched them up really high or pitched them up really down to try to make them sound different than the original sample, and they believe that's a way that they can avoid potential copyright issues in the past. In your experience, has that been the case?
No.
Okay.
They hire music specialists, and they can subpoena your sessions to do a wave file analysis, because everything's recorded on a computer now, which is a visual as well as an audio. So now it's not your ear. You can match the file by looking at it, and if it's exactly the same, they got you. You know what I mean? So I haven't heard any cases of that actually happening, but that's kind of been the talk in the rumor mill, what can happen. Somebody, oh no, he slowed it down, then they can go in and see what you did, the plug-in you used, and it's a mess. So no, I wouldn't think that you can get away with stuff by slowing it down or speeding it up.
Yeah, so if they want to get you, though, if they're really determined, they can basically do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it may cause somebody, it may distract somebody from recognizing their work, but if they still recognize it, they can go in and fuck you up. Did you have a question? No?
And the popularity of the tune matters as well. I mean, if you're doing an underground kind of release, you can pretty much go for it as well as you need to. The unfortunate side of that is that if something does happen and your record becomes popular, then everyone wants to capitalize on the samples that you used.
I forgot what they said. I think it was like if you're under 50,000 units sold, it's like don't even worry about it, because it's not really generating enough income for them to trip. But like I said, it's when it gets licensed, because I think there was a Stones Throw record that came out on vinyl only, which means what? It sold 5 copies or something. So, but it got licensed to a movie, and the guy saw the movie. He was like, how much money is the movie making? And he went after him. He went after Stones Throw. So that's when you kind of got to worry, when it's in some kind of marketing campaign or something like that.
Have you ever missed much with live stuff? Like
sorry,
right over here.
Who's that voice?
Would you look at doing that in the future?
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of live playing on this record around the samples. So it's just disguised. You can't really discern which is a sample and which is live, but it's probably really half and half. This album is half live instruments, half samples. I used a few people. I used, there's a group called Breakastra, who maybe some of you heard from Los Angeles, a good friend of mine, the leader of the band named Miles. He's very gifted, can play pretty much any instrument you throw at him. He played guitar, bass on some of it. I had my engineer play a lot of bass and guitar on it, and this kid named David Stromberg played a Cuban guitar called a Trace on one of the songs, and then I had a complete samba band in Brazil record for the song The Garden. So yeah, it was quite a bit.
Cool.
Mm. No? Going once? Going twice? Ah, got one. Have I DJ'd in a men's bathroom?
I already know the answer to that one. We won't get it. Yeah, I was just wondering, over the period of time that you've been into music and collecting and whatnot, and I'm aware that K-Day did used to play stuff, but I'm not sure how much, especially rap-based music, did you get to hear from outside of the obvious places, outside of LA, New York, whatever? Did you get to hear rap from Paris, UK, Japan, whatever?
Only when I started touring with Jurassic 5, when we started going to those places, I started getting into buying rap from those regions. I think actually English stuff I got into because my friend went to England in the late 80s and brought back Tim Westwood tapes, which was their big mix show. And squeezed in, you know, between Tribe and whatever was like Demon Boys and Hijack and what's the other one now? The
London Posse?
What's that?
London Posse?
No, the one, oh man, they're a really good group. What are they called? Anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
But stuff like that. So I was like, oh, England gets down too. The Cookie Crew, She-Rockers.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And then I think it was like in France when we heard Shirkin.
Yeah, sure.
I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then there was a really great Dutch rap record that I bought once. So, yeah, no, that was probably one.
Yeah, because I've noticed a lot of people only get to hear it when they reach that country. And
Right.
it's a shame because everyone's been talking about how hip-hop's this worldwide community, this worldwide movement, but yet it's not actually worldwide in itself. It's still insular in its own.
Right.
You know, you still got people who are just on their New York shit, so
Right.
to speak, you know. So, I mean, I understand that everyone's got to, you know, rep their hoods, rep their ends or whatever. But it's, I'm still waiting for, I don't know, someone to work with, you know, KRS, Chuck D and people like that have spoke about this sort of unified 5,000 leaders by 1990 or by the year 2000, and they're going to be working together, and it still hasn't really occurred. It happens in small pockets, but there's no outreach from, say, a big platinum mainstream American rapper to someone in Denmark, or because rap's in Denmark, rap has been in, you know. And I was just wondering if you ever saw a time where that would happen more so, or you yourself have plans to do that, or anyone you know.
Kind of put a we're all in the same gang world version, like people from different countries doing a posse cut or something?
A better record than that, though.
Oh, of course. Yeah, sorry, maybe that was self-destruction.
Yeah, there you go, something like that.
Yeah, that was made in L.A., man.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. Have I ever thought of it? You know, I haven't thought of it. But I think it would be a good idea. I don't know. I think something like that would probably happen here, wouldn't it? Because you have people from all over the world under one roof, you know, doing music. You have gear. So that's your task. Should you choose to accept it, you should all make a song together. You know, that would be rad. That'd be hot. Yeah, we are the world. We are the Red Bull Music Academy.
All right. I'm over here, sorry.
Right.
I just wanted to ask you.
Oh, no. Is that Torsten? No, go ahead. Sorry. I thought it was. I really did. For a second. I can only see this much.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll sit up.
There you
go. I'm a DJ and I collect, like, obviously go digging for a lot of records. And I was curious, after you play the, like, Ethiopian stuff, what, you have any other, like, preferred music from, like, whatever that we wouldn't have heard of, you know, like from countries that don't put out that much music internationally? Do you have like any preferred areas, like in Asia or in Africa? Or
well, the sample for the song we did, I didn't bring any. I'm sorry, but just for example, the song that's based off "What's the Altitude" is in Indonesian. I do try to find records from, you know, odd countries that normally, you know, you wouldn't think, you know, oh, there's a Cambodian psychedelic rock record, you know, yeah, I really want that, you know. But no, I don't have any examples for you.
But where would you go digging for
to find stuff like that?
Indonesian music like that?
Straight to the source. I mean, you know, you might want to check on eBay of that country, you know, eBay dot whatever, Cambodia,
eBay
CA or whatever, Turkey, or the only problem is, you know, it's all in their own language, So, you know, especially when you get to like eBay Korea, you know, it's like I don't know how to read Korean character, so pretty much screwed there unless they have pictures of the covers. But mostly, you know, when you tour around the world, you want to stop and, you know, nose around a little bit and ask people where the records are, which has proven to be a harder and harder task every year. But you know, that's how you get those records. I think a lot of stuff I get here in Australia, oddly enough. I have a friend that, for some reason, because it's kind of in this part of the world that, you know, here's India, here's, you know, Singapore and Indonesia. It kind of funnels down through here somehow to Australia. And so I see quite a bit of it here. Haven't seen any African stuff. But, so yeah, I do get quite a bit of it here in Australia.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
There you go.
I don't even think I need a mic. You know, you were saying that it took you like 4 years to do a record. Just asking, was you signed at that time, or did you make it and then license it to a label, or did you actually get the deal and then make?
I got the
record?
deal first.
You got the deal first, and were they like patient for 4 years? Because I know the way that labels are right now.
Oh man, I mean, I'm really surprised I'm still signed to Warner Brothers, because they're the first label that'll axe you, you know what I mean? Because I think they do annual sweeps of artists. They look, you know, the business affair guys, you know, they'll look at charts and go, okay, who isn't making us any money? Oh, this guy's been signed for 4 years.
What did you tell them? Sorry.
Well, the guy that signed me was the president of the label, so I was safe as kittens, basically. Yeah, it felt good. But I will say this, my option did change from a 3-album deal to a one-off, which isn't so good because there's no next record really, so they don't really need to invest any money in this one to make the second one more successful, which means that they're not really enthusiastic about marketing and stuff for this record, because it's the only one. I mean, they have the option to do another one if based on this one's success, but you know, they also have no option. You know, I mean, you know, they also can turn it down, just be like, you know, you're not our artist anymore. So I think that was a result of taking so long. Yeah.
And do you find like your market, if you know, what do you think is your biggest market? Because like listening to it, because I used to train in dance, I can see like a lot of people who dance really getting into what you've just played. Do you see it as like hip hop heads, dancers? Do you know what is your main audience?
Dance, probably electronic dance. I think the minute you say hip hop, you know, it's pretty. And you know, I can speak from American terms only because that's where I live. But it's very closed-minded. When you say hip hop, there's expectations that go into that, and I think the people that buy hip hop records, I don't want to say they're narrow-minded, but I kind of do. You know, I know. I mean, I think we're. I'll say it. I mean, I'm kind of like that. I know when somebody says rap record, I have a kind of an idea of what to expect. So I think when you say dance, it's a little bit more open to interpretation, and I think that audience in general is a little bit more open to try new things, and they are willing to explore more, probably because of what he said about the psychedelic movement and you know, its parallels. You know, they're just more into exploration, whereas hip hop, not so much. You know what I mean? So my biggest market would probably be the dance, electronica. Cool. That's how I would like to see it. You know, like under iTunes or something. Yeah, I think it might. I think it says hip hop though. So.
Thanks.
Thank you. So you're used to, you know, the more independent labels and dealings with more smaller companies, and then you did your thing with Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the financial stuff, what did you see was a big difference in the way that you brought your music to them?
The way I brought it to them?
Yeah, like, did you give them a different sound, or did you feel that you had to give them something a little different, or you just did you?
I just did me. I was very fortunate to have my point person there, not the guy who signed me, but a production manager, I guess was his official title, but he was my liaison from, between me and the company. And he was just really progressive minded. He liked a lot of cool shit. He was really into like Meat Beat Manifesto and like all this cool progressive dance stuff. So he let me do whatever I wanted. Everything. I challenged him. I would try to bring him stuff that he wouldn't be into. Like this is way too far left. And then when I brought him Big Break, which is that second one I played, he was like, "This is a single." And I'm like, "A single? Like what? You can actually market this as like some kind of pop forum." He's like, "Oh hell yeah!" So yeah, I just did me, and
that's dope.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool, especially in a place like Warner.
So what about?
Of course, he left now. When my record, the day my record came out, he like went to Interscope, ironically, and everything's been an uphill struggle ever since. So.
Well, you were also saying when we spoke yesterday about you would do things different, or you didn't like the way they marketed the record, or.
Well, it's still early on in the campaign,
sure.
But just numbers-wise, budget-wise, what they're giving me for videos and stuff, it's kind of not that good. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's all based on not having a next album to follow up with. So, there's so many reasons, and I don't know half of them why things are the way they are over there, but. It is early on, and I think, things with like, the iPod commercial and whatever, things could look up, sales could boost.
No, would you do anything differently next time around with the...
Yeah, put a leaving man clause in my contract, which means whoever signs me, if they leave, or if my point people leave, then I get to leave. Right. Because the problem is when you go to a label, and this happens more often than not, the people that see your vision, that signed you, they're not going to work there forever. So what happens when they leave and they pass your project off to somebody who doesn't see the vision? Those people are just going to not treat it like it, they're whatever, and they're not going to sign off on the money you need to market it, because it takes a lot of money to market something like this, especially in a label like Warner Brothers. You work for Stone's Throw. Stone's Throw knows exactly who their market is. And they strategically go after that market every time, and they sell units. Warner Brothers, their market gamut is so wide that my record just gets thrown in the sea of Green Day and Madonna or whoever, all their other acts, and it's like there's no really, like, they don't know where it's supposed to land.
But it also seems like that could be in your benefit too.
It could be if they spend the money to make the people that listen to those groups pay attention to this. Right. You know what I mean? They have to know this exists in order to know about it,
sure.
In order to buy it. And that just doesn't happen because they're too busy buying Green Day. You know what I mean? Right. So how are you gonna, be like, I'm over here,
right,
jumping in front of Trey Cool, It's like, it's kind of tough. It takes ends. So. And they could, or at least like they need to be creative about it. So.
What's up?
Well, do you think that the Apple thing though was? That's significant.
Yeah, I thought so. Of course, this is what they said. Yeah, but those things don't sell records. I was like, damn, man. It's like Apple just they're supporting me. Why can't you guys, man? What's going on? But no. I'm really making it out to be a lot worse than it really is. They're like, yeah, let's try to capitalize on this by making that song a single. I'm like, that song a single? Wow. So yeah, it does. It's doing well on like CMJ, and so people are like, oh, people actually like this crap. Maybe we should start paying attention. Like the radio promotion people are like, yeah, we're kind of getting into this now. So. It has helped.
But would you say, like, from your experience, the active time in terms of how long the company pays attention to your project and works it is going to be different as well? You have a shorter window of opportunity, smaller window of opportunity.
One thing they seem to be realizing, which I think too, is this isn't a record that just like you blow it up and then it's over. You know what I mean? This is a slow process of working this record, perhaps like a year and a half to whatever. So that's cool. Like they're not. I don't think they're gonna slow down on trying to make it work anytime soon. I think they're gonna just keep pushing it along, and maybe it won't sell like 100,000 units in a month or whatever. But it may, like in a year or something, and they said that's cool. They're not trying to sell like a lot of records, because people don't sell records anymore. It's all downloads and and so they're hip to that now, and so that's cool.
Do they do they give you an idea of what their plan is in terms of marketing? What they're about to do?
No,
Do you
that's
get a
one
say
thing
in
I've
that?
constantly asked them is to diagram me a marketing plan from A to Z about this album, first single, second single, third single, and how you're going to work it, where, and they've never done that, even though I constantly ask them, how are you going to work this to alternative radio, college radio? They just throw it out there and see what sticks.
So you don't get much input into, what you would like to achieve, like where you'd like it to see it,
I tell them.
Publicized and so on?
That's all I can really do. I can't really go in there like Suge and hang the guy by his ankles out the window. I mean, I could try it, but I'm pretty sure security would rough me up.
Not that he would ever do anything like that.
Not that I would ever do anything like that.
Any other questions?
I guess you can worry, in fact, because I've been, I was in the two sides. I've been in a major for a while, and then having my independent PR company, I know that this is... sorry to say that, it's not a good sign when it happens like that. Maybe you should have released the album a bit before, when there was the boss.
Probably.
For 4 years.
But the music wasn't ready then. It would have been
that's just
something I wasn't happy with. I'd rather put out a record and be totally happy with it and not be successful than have a crappy record be really successful.
A very important point is that, especially for when you sign in a major, is that if I experienced that with Cinemix, with my record, is that you don't get released in the other countries. They don't take the option because they think it's a too underground record. For example, that's what happened to me. It's sold 4,000 worldwide. I've just done the executive production. I'm not like the
What territories turned it down?
Sorry?
What territories turned your record down?
It was released in 10 territories.
Oh, okay.
But it's originally from Universal Jazz France.
Oh, okay.
And but the other territories, obviously, the other Universal didn't get it. Even the one who released it to please the Universal Jazz France, for example, and the other just didn't pay attention to it. So basically, that's the main problem, is that it's better, I think, to be in a big independent label but be released everywhere with a good promotion everywhere, than being on a major who doesn't really control the other territories in a way. They cannot push them to release it. I don't know if you have commitments from all the territories to release your album. That's my question, actually.
Okay, what's the question? I'm sorry?
So my question is your record going to be released worldwide?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it is, as far as I know. I know it's, at least in Japan, usually when they tell me the UK, that should mean Europe, all of Europe. America, yeah, Canada, yeah, Japan, Europe.
Australia.
Yeah, I think we're good, and it's all Warner. But I think I feel more comfortable sometimes when it's not Warner. It's licensed to different companies in different territories. I like that because I think it almost creates a competition between the companies. It's like, oh well, France is blowing it up. You're tripping, so you need to like pick up the pace. Or or more independent labels are who know their markets. Sometimes that's what we did with the J5 EP. We were signed to Interscope in the U.S., but we licensed it to Play It Again Sam in the UK, and it really worked out well. And both were really successful. So. I think that's better.
Do you have your own studio?
Yeah.
So do you still need a producer as for producing the record, or you just need a producer for the license and the distribution?
I mean, I could do everything myself if I wanted to. I could, you know, record a song, mix it, press it up, you know, down the street and sell it out of my car. I mean, that's how we started. We did exactly that. But, you know, my time is short because I have to tour and, you know, so I don't really have time to do all that stuff. So I kind of need a company to do it for me.
You need the company to pay the time for you
to manufacture and distribute.
Oh yeah, but you can arrive with a product that you just license.
Oh, I see. I could. Yeah, I could do that. I always feel funny about that though, because I almost feel like, you know, I need to find a home first in order to make my music. You know, otherwise it's like I wouldn't feel motivated to do anything. If Warner Brothers wasn't on my back, you know, saying where's the record, I probably never would have finished this. I just would have been like, one day I'll sell this to a company and it'll be great, but it never happened.
But
so
you took 4 years anyway.
What's that?
You took 4 years anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm saying if I wasn't signed, I would have taken 10, 11, 12, you know? It would just been, you know, like...
It's all relative.
It's all relative, so, yeah, 4 years. I mean, mind you, I was in 2 groups and touring all the time too, man, so got me some slack. I left my group for this record, man. Poor me.
And you were doing Red Bull a bunch of times.
Yeah, I was doing Red Bull a bunch of times. So, yeah. Anything else?
You can have several cans for free.
I can have, yes, I can.
Anybody else? One more in the back.
Hey.
I want to know what kind of software you use for your production, like for your record.
Pro Tools?
Pro Tools.
Mm-hmm. A very primitive version of Pro Tools. I think it's like TDM 56, what is it? I don't know, 9.2. Yeah, I use Pro Tools. It just, for no other reason than that was what somebody turned me on to. I mean, had they shown me Vegas or Reason, I probably would have done that. But, you know, it was just what the last guy was doing. So I was like, all right, you know, that sounds cool. Before that, I was using well, some of the record I use an 8-track reel-to-reel. I ditched my drum machine. I used to use an MPC 2000 to make beats. Not anymore. And what else? I use the CDJ sometimes for pitch shifting, which is cool. But then I realized I can do that on Pro Tools anyway, so what's the point? And yeah, so Pro Tools is go for it. What's that?
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Is that it? Oh no, we got 2 more. It's the lecture that keeps on
Hi,
lecturing.
I just wanted to ask, do you still have the same passion for music now than you had like years ago when you first discovered these records and amazing music?
If I hesitate that long, that must mean no. No, I do. I think, you know, after this was an incredibly hard experience for me and incredibly personal, because it's such a personal record for me that I'm almost like I'm completely spent. You know, so it's kind of a bad time to ask me because I'm not really ready to, you know, pull on my passion together to make another record or to like really appreciate stuff. I mean, I love this, you know, buying records and I get really excited about it. But to give you an example, I'm not buying as many records as I used to. I'm not as active going out and digging. So there must be a reason for that, and maybe that's it. Maybe records are too expensive. Maybe they're not out there like they used to be, and I don't want to spend the time. I don't know, you know. But yeah, I'm not quite as excited, but I still get jazzed up when I hear a really good record, and I want it. You know what I mean? And I think it'll be a while. It'll probably be another year before I start really actively making another solo record and really getting excited about it. So, and I mean, I can't wait till that happens. But
thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
Is with the question, you cut and edit after you record your scratch and these things, you program in Pro Tools?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that's a yes or no question, right?
Oh, yeah.
I edit. Well, you know, Do I edit my scratching? Is that what you're asking? Like, do I scratch and
Yeah,
like...
because I don't know if I'm right, but Kid Koala.
Kid Koala, yeah.
Yeah, I think that he only record a lot of times until...
He gets it exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so do I record a scratch and then, it's kind of offbeat, let me fudge it in Pro Tools? Am I cheating? Is that what you want to know? You want to know if I'm cheating? Because Kid Koala doesn't cheat. He does, lady. He cheats big time.
Sorry.
No, it depends. I do cheat it a little bit. My only justification of it is, can I recreate it live later? Yeah, I can. Every scratch on my record I can pretty much recreate in a show, which to me, maybe when I record it, I'm not quite there yet, or I just put my arrangement hat on first, and I kind of need to do that in the computer. I can't really improvise that a lot. So I'll do a scratch and be like, well, let me see how interesting I can make this in the computer. And then maybe I'll recreate it after I put it in the computer.
It's a bad
or sometimes I won't.
thing.
Sometimes I'll just leave it as is and just know that I can do it live in a show if somebody asks me to. I do both. Whatever works. I don't really have any rules about how I do it. You know what I mean? It's this turntable is, kind of mentality sometimes where it's like, no, you can't do that. Like Premiere. I think Premiere started it. It was like, no, he does all those cuts live. They're razor sharp and really funky, and it's like, did he? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I don't care if he did or he didn't. It sounds fucking great. So, and I've seen him do it live, so show and improve. So it's all good. But Kid Koala is one of my favorites. He's great. No?
Did you always have your head around the engineering side of things when you started making beats and so on? Or is that something that was, that you're really interested in wrapping your head around?
I'm sorry, engineering?
Well,
like mixing and stuff, like actually mixing sounds. I was into it because it was something I had to do. I was never really into engineering. I never went to school for it. I just know I needed to do it to put my songs on tape. So, add a little highs, okay. Add a little lows. Add a little mids. That's just like turning the volume up, basically. So, no, I'm not really good at it. I tried mixing my album myself, and it sounded like ass. So I got this guy that assisted engineered the J5 records, and he just has this garage with a computer, and he's just a whiz with plugins and EQs. So he mixed it. But I mean, I was backseat driving the whole thing. But he was twisting the knobs and suggesting what I could use to make it sound this way or that way.
Yeah. What was one of the key things that made you move away from the MPC and move just to using Pro Tools?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You were saying before that that you've moved away from using your drum machine.
Oh, right. Why?
Yeah.
The bit rate. I was using the MPC 2000, and it's 16-bit. Why not go 24? Because I did a little taste test. I sampled a record on the drum machine and on the computer, and I noticed the high end. There was something about the crispiness of the drums that the MP didn't get, that the computer did. And so, I'm really sensitive to like the crack of a snare and like the high end sizzleness, sizzly kind of texture of drums. So I was like, I'm not going to lose that kind of resolution on my shit. I'm going to just go straight in the computer. Yeah. And plus, the sequencing on the drum machine is fallible. You know what I mean? I think every 12 reps, you can hear it jump or skip or something. It's ever slightly, but it's just enough to annoy the shit out of me. So Pro Tools is exact. You put it in grid mode and boom. The fact that I can see it, although it's deceiving to use your eyes for music, but I just like it. For those reasons, that's why I ditched it.
Yeah, but you're still like hands-on. Do you still use pads and stuff when you're to trigger stuff with Pro Tools?
No, it's really geeky, man. It's me with a mouse. It's not appealing at all.
No, cool.
And it's funny because the music I make is very much, it tries to sound hand done, very like it's manual. It's all manual. No computers, or and I think that's what takes a lot of time to create this music, is to make it not sound like it was made on a computer, or not sound like, because in simple terms, my album is just, every song is a series of repetitions being taken out, put back in, but it's a series of loops and repetitions. And that sounds cold as ice, that's not very human, it's just, so I spent a lot of time making it not sound like that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it'd be difficult, especially with all the changes in rhythm and tempos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times I would have to put something in slip mode, which is the mode that's not dedicated to a grid in your computer. I don't know if everybody uses software, to give it more of a human quality, so it kind of didn't really, it's straight off the tempo map and stuff. But it would always land back on at some point, because I don't want to totally just be at like, Wild West tempo. Because you want DJs to be able to blend it, you know what I mean? In the end, it's like, oh, you don't want it to be like One Love by Nas. It's where the snares aren't matching up. God, that was annoying to blend that record, man. It's like, what the hell's Q-Tip doing, man? Beat isn't even, doesn't even loop on beat. But then you realize the Heath Brothers sample, he kind of had to do that because it was so swinging that, couldn't be bound by any tempo map. Anyway.
Anybody else? Okay, Adam.
Hymnal, you spoke about the line that gets blurred between performer and artist and the audience. And I was curious if you could recommend some authors, like you mentioned Carl Jung, that kind of explore those concepts. Or if you have some thoughts you'd like to go into on that.
Well, yeah, well, there was kind of two distinct subjects that, when I was talking about that line between the artist and the audience, I mean, things that come to mind for me are some of those anthemic rock albums like The Wall by Pink Floyd, but that's exclusively about that exact phenomenon and how the artist can lose his place by their ego, becoming so enlarged by the fact that they're a star or they're a musician that they lose their perspective, and that in that movie, as many of you know who've probably seen it, the rock star literally becomes a fascist dictator, and the audience becomes like a faceless sea of followers. And in the sense of working with Cut on this record, there may be the idea of, and this is just me, I can't speak for him, but the idea of doing a solo record and coming from a group like J5, and just what is the impact of that? What is going to be his own audience when he strikes out on his own? And we work some of those themes in the record. As far as books that are out there, one book that I didn't mention, which in terms of conscious rap or the influence on rap in the United States, and this is a good one for most of you to know, there's a guy named Noble Drew Ali who wrote a book called The Circle 7. And that book was, to kind of just be succinct about it, based on a lot of Freemasonic teaching and Eastern teaching that he put together as a remedy for African Americans to better themselves. And one of the students of Noble Drew Ali was Elijah Muhammad, who was the founder of the Nation of Islam. And the Nation of Islam and the ideas that came out of the East Coast were pretty much the predominant philosophical ideas that influenced Zulu Nation. And then through Zulu Nation, those ideas were disseminated through the Jungle Brothers, Tribe, De La, X-Clan, Public Enemy, and so forth. So if you're a hip-hop connoisseur, you're interested in the roots of where that philosophically came from, you'll want to look up information on a guy named Noble Drew Ali. Another figure that's a little more esoteric but influencing African American spiritual consciousness is, of course, Sun Ra, the jazz artist. I think he was from Chicago also, and Chicago was the big place that Elijah Muhammad came out of. Sun Ra, it's like, believe it or not, his some of his influences started when he was 8 and was in the Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, because if you recall some of their early literature, they talk about a God that is in nature, and that comes from a Freemasonic idea, the idea that God is internal, and that idea that God is internal really fits in with the neo-pagan culture and the idea that ecstasy can be achieved through your own bodily acts, not necessarily through grace from above, but that you can find it living and existing inside yourself. And I think that that's kind of a predominant idea in music. And if you're interested in more information on him, there's a book on Sun Ra called Space is the Place, The Life and Times of Sun Ra.
And it's a wonderful motion picture as well, actually.
Right, yeah, where he does battle with the devil.
Yeah. It's a good movie, if anybody gets a chance. It's on DVD. Netflix, everybody. Anything else?
Yes.
Yes.
Over here.
Right.
I unfortunately missed your set yesterday, but I think it was a DJ set, right?
What, the one in the woman's bathroom?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about the bathroom. I just wondered, do you also do a live set? Like, do you perform your album in a way?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know. And what do you use then? How do you?
I'm here because I'm on the Park Life tour, which is a DJ tour across Australia, and for that I'm doing my artist, quote unquote, artist set, which is, it's 4 decks, it's 2 turntables and a mixer, 2 CDJs and a mixer, Serato, and something else, I can't remember, a wah-wah pedal, I don't know. And I use Serato to dismantle some of my songs on my album, to use elements to recreate them live. And then I use the CDJs to use the cue points for like drum machine kind of like pads and do some minor programming. And but yeah, I do try my best to interpret what's on the record live. And it's not just me playing my record, like playing a song and just going, yeah, I'm cool. It's actually me trying to do something, and much in the tradition of people like Kid Koala, who I'm probably his biggest fan in the world. He's one of the greatest live DJs ever, and he does that. You could see everything that you could see how he made his record right in front of you, and I'm a big fan of that. That's why I like DJing. I like seeing something. I like to see you entertain. But there is interwoven in that parts of me playing other people's records and kind of doing a DJ set just to kind of get people dancing. Because I think even though I like people watching what I'm doing, I also want them to dance too. I don't want them to just, watch me for an hour and a half. Maybe they can dance and know when to look back and watch me and then dance again, and then watch me and then dance again. And that happens. That does happen. Because they know when there's something to watch. Turntablist parts of the show, DJ parts of the show, parts to listen to records. Ooh, he's playing a 45. It's funky. So yeah, but no, the women's bathroom set was just a set, and I don't know, man. As much talk as I hear about it today, maybe because it was in a bathroom, but I don't really think people were feeling it, because I looked up, how do you follow up Nelly Furtado, Promiscuous? You play Mulatu. That doesn't go over sometimes. But, you do what you do. I'm not going to change what I do to, please people that want to hear Gnarls Barkley 12 times in one night, I'm going to try to school them on something. And I think they'll walk away subconsciously saying, oh shit, wait, what was that shit he played last night though? Why is that, you know, in my head? Or, you know, the next time I'll come out, maybe they'll be ready for it. A lot of the times when we do, when me and Shadow will do something for Brain Freeze or product placement, it's maybe people don't get it, but a year from then, you know, they're like, oh, I was there, you know, you know. So it's like, don't wait next year to dance to it. Dance to it now, you know. Get it now. Why not? It's not that hard. But you know, whatever. I'll just keep playing my Mulatu records in women's bathrooms and fuck it. You know, proud of it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Dwindling. That's it. We're wrapping it up.
All right. Thank you, Cut Chemist.
Thank
Hymnal.
you. Give it up for Hymnal.